There is a legend that Leonardo da Vinci could not find a suitable model for his fresco The Last Supper. And one day he was in a church and saw a handsome young man singing in the choir. His features seemed perfect to Leonardo for the image of Jesus, so he invited him to his studio and made sketches. It took 3 years to create the fresco, and in the end Leonardo only had to paint the face of Judas, but he couldn't find a model who looked sinful enough. The patron was already starting to get nervous and was urging the artist to hurry up. And then one day, Leonardo passed by a homeless, dirty and ragged man who was lying drunk in a gutter. His prematurely aged, unkempt and drunken face seemed to Da Vinci like an excellent model for Judas. But there was no time left for a sketch, so the artist's assistants dragged the homeless man straight into the church, to the nearly finished fresco. The ragged beggar barely understood what was happening, while Leonardo transferred to the canvas the sinfulness and despair that radiated from his face. When the homeless man looked around, he was amazed. He said that he had already seen this painting 3 years ago before I lost everything. Back then, when I sang in the choir and my life was full of dreams, some artist painted me as Christ. Maybe good and evil have the same face and friends on both sides, and it all depends only on the time when they cross our path. Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper is among the top 10 most famous paintings in the world. This is a monumental mural that the genius Leonardo, together with his students, painted at the end of the 15th century in the Dominican monastery of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. The mural depicts one of the last days of Christ on earth. There are many mysterious stories, riddles and interpretations associated with this fresco, which I will tell you about today. The Last Supper is one of the most important events in the Gospel. It was during this event that Jesus predicted the betrayal of Judas, one of the 12 apostles, although he did not mention his name. It is with them that Jesus is dining. Leonardo worked on his painting for a whole 3 years. Its size is almost 9 by 4.5 meters. It is located in the refectory of the monastery on the back wall. The theme is traditional for this type of room. We show a feast where people eat to stimulate the appetite. I'll tell you about the plot. According to the Gospel, that evening Jesus reclined with his 12 disciples. Yes, at that time it was customary to recline around the table. And during the feast Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me," as a prediction of Judas's betrayal. Leonardo da Vinci wanted to convey the reaction to these striking words. In his painting, he carefully studied the characters of all 12 apostles and tried to reflect how each of them would react to his words. The painting depicts the feast participants sitting, not lying down. Leonardo decided to break the canon and depict the figures sitting properly at the table, facing the viewer. He placed Jesus in the geometric center and the apostles, 6 people on the right and 6 on the left. And now let's take a closer look at each of these 12 faces. The painting has not been perfectly preserved, and a little later I will tell you the story of the misfortunes that befell it over the centuries after it was created. But I hope you will be able to see the details that will reveal to you the intention of Da Vinci. All 12 apostles are disciples of Christ and preachers of his word. According to tradition, lands were divided among them, in which they were to carry the word of God. They all set out on this difficult mission, and all of them died rather unpleasant and even martyrs' deaths. Well, almost all of them. Suicide also doesn't seem like the most pleasant procedure to me. Their deaths are given special attention in the scriptures because martyrs and saints are not simply accepted. There must be evidence of suffering and miracles. And we'll start from left to right. First comes the Apostle Bartholomew. He is usually depicted in light clothing with a golden pattern and a knife in his hand, symbolizing his martyrdom. He was called to be a disciple fourth, after Andrei, Peter, and Philip Varkvalmei. He preached in the Armenian lands, and according to the Gospel, he was captured by local pagans, crucified upside down, but he still continued to preach. He was taken down from the cross, his skin flayed, and then beheaded, which explains the presence of a knife. Second is the Apostle Yaakov Alfev. He was originally a tax collector and preached in Judea. Because this name was extremely popular, all the Yaakovs got mixed up, and we don't have a clear description of his path. The Gospel states that he preached together with Andrei, but was stoned to death in the lands of Judea. Third is the Apostle Andrei Prvosvani, the first to be called as a disciple. He is second in significance among the apostles after his brother Peter. The Apostle Andrei is depicted in red and green robes with a short beard, holding a cross or a slanted cross, which is a symbol of his martyrdom, as well as a scroll or a book in his hand. Andrei was given the vast lands of Bithynia and Propontis for his preaching. He was crucified on a slanted cross, which is now called the Andreevsky cross in honor of this barbaric act, and the Andreevsky flag also comes from there as well. Judas Iscariot, that very one, is depicted wearing clothes of green and blue colors. The only one from Judea before becoming a disciple, he was the treasurer and kept the money of his community. According to tradition, at the meal, Jesus dipped bread in oil and handed it to him with the words, "What you are doing, do it quickly." Judas then went out and immediately betrayed him, giving him up to the chief priests for 30 silver pieces, which he clutches in his hand in Leonardo's painting. After Jesus Christos was sentenced to crucifixion, Judas repented and returned the 30 pieces of silver. But the chief priest dismissed it, saying it was his problem. Judas threw the silver coins in the temple and hanged himself, which also seems to be an unpleasant death. Fifth comes the Apostle Peter, brother of Andrei, the most important of the apostles, along with Pavel, and he is called the chief apostle. He serves as the executive director while simultaneously holding another role. The key bearer, guardian of paradise, is shown with the keys. He is depicted with grey short hair and a beard, dressed in yellow and blue robes. Peter, one of Jesus' favorite disciples, was lively and quick-tempered by nature. After Jesus' arrest, he fearfully denied him thrice, but was later forgiven. According to tradition, during Emperor Nero's persecution of Christians, the Apostle Peter was crucified on an upside-down cross at his own request. He considered himself unworthy to die the same death as his master, so he was crucified upside down. John the theologian, the closest to Jesus on the left, was the only one of the apostles who died a natural death. John was the author of the Gospel of John and the most eloquent of the apostles, and together with Peter, he was among those closest to Jesus. According to his lot, he preached in Ephesus, for which, of course, he was sentenced to death. However, after drinking the cup of deadly poison offered to him, he remained alive and unharmed. He came out of the cauldron of boiling oil. After that, he was exiled in captivity to the island of Patmos, where he lived for many more years. And he managed to write that very apocalypse, and after returning from the island, he also wrote the Gospel. He was extremely productive and lived to be 100 years old, possibly capable of living even longer. But it's not proper for apostles to die a natural death, otherwise they won't be considered martyrs, so he ordered himself to be buried alive. And now we move on to the right side of the case of Christ. Yakov Zevedeyev, apparently Russian, is depicted with a pilgrim's staff, as someone who has traveled a long pilgrimage, and with a scallop shell. Yakov, along with his brother and the Apostle Peter, was the closest disciple to Jesus. It's no coincidence that he sits on the right. King Herod Agrippa killed Yakov with a sword. Before his death, he preached to the Gudei and was impulsive. Apostle Foma is the very same doubting Foma, called so because he did not believe in the resurrection of Christ until he saw it with his own eyes, seeing Christ risen and touching the wounds from the nails on his teacher's body with his fingers. He preached in India and China, for which he was pierced with a spear by the guards of the ruler of the Indian city of Meliopora, Mosdey. Even as he was dying, he continued to preach and forgive his killers, which is why he is considered a symbol of steadfast faith. The ninth apostle, Philip, was called third. Philip, a cool guy, preached God's word in Galilee and Greece, performed miracles, and resurrected a grieving mother's baby. For his preaching activity, he was executed. He was crucified upside down in the standard way at the age of 87. As you can see, they didn't really give age discounts back then. In 10th place is Levite. Matthew, the author of the first canonical gospel bearing his name, is often depicted with an angel by his side. He preached in Africa, in Ethiopia, where he was burned at the stake in the land of cannibals. It's unknown if they consumed him after the event. Apostle Thaddeus preached in Palestine, Arabia, Syria, and Mesopotamia. And of course, he died a martyr's death in Armenia. He was brutally clubbed and crucified. It was a very popular form of execution. 12th and last is Simon the Zealot, the most righteous of the 12 apostles. He preached the teachings of Christ in Judea, Egypt, Armenia, Abkhazia, and Mesopotamia. According to tradition, the apostle suffered a martyr's death in Persia, where he was sawn in half with a saw, which is why he is traditionally depicted with it. And of course, Jesus himself during his words, who so stirred up the gathering. Leonardo da Vinci really wanted to depict the reaction of the apostles in accordance with the character of each of them and their role in spreading the word of Christ. Before his painting, this scene was often portrayed as melancholic and distant, as the saints are seated rather than casually interacting like in a bathhouse. Leonardo aimed to infuse the scene with life and emotion, considering how real people would genuinely react in the situation. And that's what makes this mural unique. But it seems that in the 500 years since it was created, people have tried to destroy the mural. All sorts of circumstances and Leonardo's inventiveness played a bad trick on this work. The new painting technique he invented was unknown to others and did not stand the test of time. The dining hall, located next to the kitchen where food was constantly cooked, caused the painting to deteriorate even during its creation, since the primer under the tempera swelled and the paint did not allow the moisture to evaporate. After 70 years, only a dull spot remained of the painting, and another 100 years later, a passage was cut through its lower part and part of the fresco was lost. Later, the painting was covered with fabric in an attempt to preserve it, but this worsened the situation by further preventing moisture evaporation. In 1726, 230 years after its creation, the secondary painter Michelangelo Bellotti volunteered to restore the painting but simply painted over the lost areas with oil paint and covered the rest with varnish, which damaged the painting even more. In 1796, Napoleon Bonaparte, who invaded Italy, ordered the Last Supper to be placed under protection. But the gods, who considered everything Italian to be hostile, turned the place into a stable and threw stones and horse manure at the painting. And then they climbed up to scratch out the apostles' eyes. Eventually, they turned this room into a prison, and in the year 1800, a flood completely submerged the refectory along with the prisoners, and the painting became covered with mold. In the year 1821, when Italy expelled Bonaparte, Stefano Borezzi, known for his exceptional skill in carefully removing frescoes from walls, was invited to restore it. But he didn't know the painting used a different technique and ruined a huge center section, thinking it was a fresco. He tried to stick the removed piece back, but it didn't help much. And only in 1908, 400 years later, Luigi Covenaghi conducted a thorough study of the painting's structure for the first time and confirmed that it was an unusual fresco. During World War II, a bomb hit the building, the roof was destroyed, the walls cracked, and it seemed that the fresco was lost forever because almost nothing was left of it. And only at the end of the last century did technologies appear that were capable of saving the work of the great Leonardo. The restoration of the work was entrusted to the renowned specialist, director of the Restoration Center, Penin Brambilla, Barcelona. A team of restorers from all over the world, using delicate solvents, removed numerous layers of shellac, paint, and oils that had been applied by careless restorers. Areas that were too damaged or unrecognizable were toned with light watercolor paints. This outstanding work lasted 21 years, and on May 28, 1999, the mural was opened for viewing. Now, the former refectory has been transformed into a sealed room with a controlled climate to prevent further deterioration of the mural. Visitors must pass through several chambers that filter out pollution and humidity, and they are only allowed to view the artwork from a distance and for a limited time of 15 to 20 minutes. That's how it is, my friends. True art never dies. Since then, there have been many interpretations of the Last Supper, one of which we saw together recently at the opening of the Olympics in Paris. But true art, which has survived wars, floods, and clumsy restorations, is never offended by interpretations, no matter how controversial they may be. Interpretations can never compete with true art. Please like this video right now and subscribe to the channel. Here we discuss art in a simple and honest manner. This was Nina Shoff with you.